Hello and welcome to this special and sad episode that I'm making today regarding the assassination of David Wilcock. Author and researcher, UFO and paranormal expert and TV personality on shows like Wisdom Teachings on Gaia TV, has tragically died at his home in Boulder, Colorado this week on 20th of April 2026. He was 53 years old. In the first instance, I want to share my deepest condolences to David's family, his parents and his friends, and I pray for them at this time. David's inner light and peaceful, gentle nature impacted many all around the world. There has been very little coverage of this by the mainstream media, and I would like to take this opportunity to shed some light as I see it on his passing. It is the most distressing of news and made a million trillion times worse by the obvious and deliberate unaliving of a good man, a prophet, a researcher and a truth seeker, staged as a self-exit when all of the evidence points elsewhere and points to nefarious interference. I do not believe the narrative of the events provided in the official police report, and it makes me very angry and frustrated to see how blatantly we, the good people of the world, are being force-fed these packaged lies and told to accept it blindly. And when those managed narrative scripts are emerging straight from the mouths of the police authorities from the get-go, we must use our discernment and push back immediately before the official story takes hold and becomes yesterday's news. It is extremely important that these questions are asked and answered as soon as possible. Here are the reasons, in my opinion, why the official narrative of suicide is not even possible. If, as it appears to me, that this is a whitewash, then there must be another version of events to be uncovered. After looking at the official report, I will attempt to present a few alternative theories about what may have happened. David Wilcock, with all of his gifts, above all, was committed to the truth. And he was a servant of God. And we would do right to honour his memory and not stop our investigations until this truth is discovered. We owe it to him, and we owe it to ourselves. Please feel free to leave your comments or well wishes for David and his family in the comment section and the chat, and you are welcome to ask questions. I will try to answer from my own point of view to the best of my ability. When we come together to ask these questions and search for the truth, we are going to get to that truth faster and more fully than what we can do alone. I am not asking you to accept these ideas as truth. They are theories at the end of the day. But let's explore what we do know. I welcome healthy debate, but I won't tolerate any trolling or disrespect to myself or anyone else in the chat. I have been through a lot of crazy stuff myself, like David has, in terms of being cyber-stalked online and gang-stalked around my home, my various homes in various countries for a very long time, with physical attempts on my life, including poisoning me, the thing that I have been dealing with most recently, and having my YouTube channel shadow banned precisely because I speak the truth, and I speak about God, and I share advice about censored topics like wellness and natural medicine. I am not hurting anyone. In fact, I am a healer. But I have a story to tell that would make your hair stand on end. People don't like my truth when it exposes their lies. But hey, they can just suck it up. I will tell you my story in due time, but not today. Today I want to talk about David Wilcock. I am not asking for any money. This video is not being monetized. I only ask one thing: please like this video and subscribe to my channel. If you can go so far as to hype it up and share it on your socials, please do your thing. It is totally free to support this message, just a click, 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 5 seconds max. And it's a great way to help move this video to as many people as possible. Thank you. So in talking about the official report, I've got a sort of bulleted list that I've made just to try and separate some of these ideas. The number one, David Wilcock was not suicidal. He declared on a very regular basis in the press and on his own channel that he was not suicidal and would never take his own life. He presented his weekly live show on Sunday the 19th of April 2026, less than 24 hours earlier, and he was his usual bubbly self. Despite the issues with his health and the difficulties he had been experiencing at the hands of gang stalkers and cyber stalkers, to which he spoke about openly, he was expressing what an amazing time it was to be alive and how honoured he is to be able to deliver the messages that he does. He felt it was his mission to communicate, particularly in relation to disclosure of information about UFOs and UAPs. There were 2,500 people watching his live YouTube show on the 19th of April, with 9,000 views by the halfway mark of a 3.5 hour show. In fact, it was 3 hours, 33 minutes. There was a huge number of questions coming in on a range of subjects, which David responded immediately in each case, managing the live chat like a pro, showing just how many people looks to him for guidance and hope and insider knowledge. And he received so much love and support in the chat and in the comments. He received advice on his diet and food and organic meat versus a vegan diet, a topic that dominated a large part of the show, as David talked openly and unashamedly about his physical health concerns, and people responded in a lovely way. Many people requesting his PO box address in order to send him donations of money and care packages of food. And he was clearly touched by this. While David navigated some very hot topics on the show, he interjected with his very unique brand of comedy, Angry Daddy. And while it is not everyone's cup of tea perhaps, he knew that it made people happy and he liked to do it. He switched between a couple of characters seamlessly and was able to comment and self-deprecate on his own comedy, that it was clear he was lucid and completely in control of his mind. I say this to counter the theory that his mental health was as compromised as has been put forward by other certain YouTube channels, whose name we won't mention here. But I will say that anyone who is desperate to get out ahead of this story and push a certain narrative, or even push the official narrative when the coroner's report has not even been released, must have their own reason and their own agenda for doing so. And I would steer clear of these channels and keep an open mind. Number two. One of David's close, long-time friends has stated that David would never kill himself. Through many conversations they had had, David talked of his beliefs around the karma that is attached to doing this act of taking one's own life, and it is not something that would be conceivable in his personal worldview. Number three. The report of the incident says that the Boulder police received a phone call from a man who was having some kind of mental episode. The phone call has not been released, The call was received at 11 a.m. The police managed to arrive on scene within 15 minutes. A small point, but it seems incredibly quick if you ask me. According to police, David shot himself within 2 minutes of the police arriving on scene. I have worked at the sharp end of severe mental health for a very long time, and I have witnessed many scenarios where people are talking about ending their life. In many cases, it does not end in a fatality. If a person calls the police threatening to harm themselves, it is very often a cry for help. If the police were to show up that fast, it seems odd that the person would then follow through and pull the trigger as help is walking towards them. When someone is determined to commit this act, they often don't tell anyone or request assistance or call the police. We only find out after the fact. Number 4. One report used the words, "A man died after an altercation with police," which certainly puts a different slant on it. We don't know what happened at the scene because there are no other witnesses and the police body cam footage has not been released. At this time, there is just the word of the police officer or officers who attended. I do not suggest they're lying. I believe the phone call could have been faked and that the man who shot himself could have not been David, or a man looking like David, or looking a lot like him, like a clone. And that something terrible had already happened or been done to the real David, is my theory on that. It could well have all been a setup. The various reports on the internet have already confirmed that it was David Wilcock, but at this time of going to print, the coroner has not formally identified the body, nor has the true cause of death been established, and there is still the matter of the autopsy. Number 5. This will be the 12th mysterious disappearance or sudden death, unaliving, of a member of the United States scientific community in a very short space of time, all of whom were working on aerospace, nuclear physics, and jet propulsion systems. I don't know the extent or detail of what David was working on, but I have heard that he was connected to aerospace research and specifically in anti-gravity technology. Number 6. In terms of timing, this week in April 2026 was of enormous significance to David Wilcock. For decades, David has worked tirelessly to bring about disclosure about UFO and UAP intelligence, the truth of what the government has been hiding. This was his life's work. Now here we are in April 2026, and we have real guarantees that this information is about to be released and disclosure is nearly upon us. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever that David would choose to leave this world when everything he has worked for, and even to an extent prophesized about, would now be coming out into the light. He was literally saying on the 19th of April, what an amazing time it was to be alive, to see these things finally come to the surface. Number 7, the poisoning theory, my theory. The reason I mentioned poisoning before is because I see a connection between the systems that David was expressing and my own experience. He talked on his show about an unusual fatigue, low energy, and gastrointestinal problems that he was struggling with and affecting his sleep and anxiety. These symptoms sound like mine, and I know that I have been poisoned on more than one occasion. but most recently over New Year 2025 to 2026. In the beginning, I was experiencing violent vomiting. I have had food poisoning before from bad meat at a fast food stand. Once my body has purged the toxic poisonous food, then I return to normal. But not in my recent case. This was definitely something different. Someone had spiked my food or drink that stayed in my system and kept affecting me. Hang on, let me plug my charger in. Where was I? This was definitely something different. Someone had spiked my food or my drink so that it actually stayed in my system and kept affecting me days, in fact weeks after the initial event. I have been working hard to alleviate the poison from my system. This poisoning was most likely intended to take my life, but this isn't possible. I am too strong, and I have a lot of ways to defend myself, but it has certainly been able to make me ill. And I have also been experiencing a constant cold, runny nose and sore throat since exactly the same period. I don't know if they are connected, but I know that my health is normally very strong, and people have been messing with me, spiking my drinks or food at any opportunity. I am usually very guarded about what I drink or eat now because of it, but I was at a party hosted by people I was working for, and I thought I was in a safe space. There are poisons and compounds that can induce all sorts of psychological and physiological issues and deplete the body slowly over a long period of time. And I believe this is what may have been happening with David. I believe this is what's happening to a lot of people. Rather than an instant death or instant passing away, it depletes someone and weakens them and can actually be a kind of psychological warfare where it affects your nervous system, it affects your psychological mental state, and it affects all those systems which you need for healing, like sleep and being able to get good nutrients into your system and good metabolism of the food and water that you're taking in. There's so many different toxins in our environment now, not even, you know, from a point of actually being poisoned specifically. There are poisons in all the foods that we're buying from major brands and major supermarkets. There's poisons in the water coming out of your taps. There's poisons in the air. And there are certainly poisons and other nefarious things in the vaccines and the pharmaceutical drugs that are being forced upon us at every opportunity. So I'm talking about this to show that even someone like me who's pretty well versed on this stuff, and I have some very good wellness defense systems, it's managed to really, you know, have a go at me. So I can only imagine how many people that perhaps don't have a very good diet, or they don't have a good understanding of what they're consciously taking in. It could really be very fatal and very dangerous. And the fact that these poisons seem to sit in our systems and affect our nervous system at a sort of molecular level is hugely worrying. So, you know, be conscious about what you're putting in your body and who's giving you food. You know, make your food at home. Homemade food made with good, solid ingredients that you can trust really is the safest way to look after yourself. Okay, number 8. number 8. The defining thing about this case is the claim that the police witnessed him shoot himself. This is what the reports are saying. This part, I believe, is what people will remember about the incident. They'll be like, oh, well, it has to have been the way they said it because, you know, a policeman saw it happen. And if you didn't know David or what he stood for or the consistent death threats that he had received, it might make you believe this too. It might make you believe that the official story is what it is. But you and I know that we should believe very, very little of what we see in mainstream media. And just take a lot of it with a pinch of salt. There's no such thing as the truth in the media anymore. If there ever was. There are more lies and hidden secrets coming out than ever before. And pretty much everything that was initially scoffed at for being a potential conspiracy theory is actually as true as the sun coming up every day. And they're even lying to us about the sun too, but that's another video, another day. Yeah, if you didn't know David or what he stood for personally in his own beliefs, or know about the consistent death threats he had been receiving and people messing with him, he'd even said that he felt like his life was in danger, that people were trying to kill him. He talked about the other 12 scientists that have gone missing in most recent days. And he talked about that on the 19th. And the fact that he would be working in exactly the same area of research and then go missing in this horrible way. Coincidence just doesn't come into it. But I believe this is exactly where the narrative falls down. He wouldn't have done it. He was experiencing a peak, a pinnacle in his career. And he believed in God. He believed in protecting his soul. Suicide just doesn't fit. Not here. No, having a police officer witness the shooting allows the narrative to be tied up neatly with a bow. But the body cam footage has not been shown, and I am sure what truly happened will stay hidden from view. And I don't have any other information or knowledge about the weapon that he was supposedly waving around like a madman. If you look at the official report, this is what they say, that he was waving around a weapon like a madman when the police arrived on scene. And within 2 minutes, so within 120 seconds of the police pulling up at his ranch in Boulder, Colorado, they say he decided to shoot himself in the head. Now, I don't know what his beliefs about guns were. I've seen friends and colleagues come out and say that he really wasn't that kind of person. And no, you know, there hasn't been much information released about whether he owned a gun or what type of gun it was even. So again, it's a very strange detail that's included for effect, but then there's absolutely no information, and it doesn't fit, it doesn't add up. Now, in terms of the phone call, which I think is quite interesting, because this is this is where everything begins, obviously. The police are supposed to have received a call from a man who calls himself David Wilcock and appears to be having a mental episode. Again, very vague, emotive language. And so much so, the police race out to his ranch and they make it there in 15 minutes. Now, there's every chance that phone call could have been faked. And I want to talk to you about, there's actually 3 I have now because of something I just saw this morning. But this is kind of like a bit of a sidebar. But I want people to be really, really conscious that there are very scary, dangerous groups manipulating people's phones, their iPhones, specifically these two. This is about iPhone and the doorbell Ring camera. And but believe me, Android, I'm sure, is no less vulnerable. So the first story, these are all 3 stories that I saw on TikTok. And they are frightening because of how close to home this will be for everybody. The first one is a dad and a daughter. So the dad is in the kitchen and his phone, his iPhone, is on the table in front of him. Off, like, you know, it's just sitting on the table. He hears from the living room his daughter saying something like, "Okay, Dad." And he's in the other room. So he walks out and says to his daughter, "Who are you talking to?" And she's a young person. You know, I get the impression she's like a young teen, maybe even under 10 or something. And she's holding her phone and she says, "You just called me on iPhone phone call and asked me to open the front door and said you needed help bringing in the groceries." And he said, "No, I didn't call you. My phone is sat on the table." And she went, "Yeah, you just called me." And he said, No, that's not possible. I didn't call you, but I heard you talking and I heard you say, "Dad," so I came in. And she went, "I swear, you just called me and asked me to open the front door." This was at night time as well, saying I need help with the groceries. So they went back to the kitchen and got his phone and opened up his phone, and there's no call made. But they look at her iPhone and clearly in the call log is a call from his iPhone, and it lasts however long. You can see how long it lasts, like 15, 20 seconds or something. And she said, "Dad, it sounded just like you on the phone." So somehow people are manipulating. You know, they're taking previous phone calls, previous recorded conversations, manipulating that with AI to sound like a person's voice in order to get a family member to trust that it's them. Now, obviously, she didn't go and open the front door because her dad had walked in and intercepted what had been going on. But a moment or two later, she would have quite unknowingly opened the front door to help him with the groceries and may have been snatched off her own doorstep by whoever made this call. So somebody was watching their house and knew that there was a young child in the house who could be potentially manipulated. with potentially they even knew that the dad was also at home. So it's really scary. Now the second one is even worse than that, and again, it's very strange footage. If you can go and find the video on your own, I would do, because I think it's important that people see how things like ring cam and the doorbell cameras, I don't know which company it was, I don't have one, I don't know the brands of these, but I think Ringo is one of them. So this one, this story happened in Mexico with a Spanish-speaking Mexican family, and all of the video is in Spanish, but you can quite clearly make out what happens. It's also nighttime, and there's a mother, a father, and a young boy, must be 5 years old child, sitting in bed, and they're videoing, you know, this whole thing. They're using their phone to video what's happening. The dad gets a ping on his phone from his doorbell camera saying that there's somebody at the door. So he opens the doorbell camera video on his mobile, and his son, the 5-year-old, is standing in front of the camera at the doorbell, by the Ring camera, saying, "Dad, can you let me in?" And the dad and the mum he pans the camera around and shows that this 5-year-old is lying in the bed next to them, asleep. And he goes back to the video, and he's like, "What?" And the baby at the door is going, "Dad, can you let me in? I'm stuck outside." They put captions like subtitles on the on the door on the video if you don't understand Spanish. But it's very clear what's happening. And you know, he does this a couple of times, like he pans to the child almost as if, like, you know, just double taking, and the child, his son, is lying in the bed next to them, and the same baby is standing at the front door going, "Dad, open the door, I'm stuck outside." So the dad says to the mum, like, "Stay here with the baby, I'm going to go and check it out." And so he walks to the door from behind the door, and he's sort of saying, "No, you're not my son. My son's in here with me." And the child outside, or this voice, is saying, "No, Dad, it's me, I'm your son." And the dad's saying, "No, no, no, you're not my son." And this child looks up at the camera, and it is the dad's baby, but he's got like a demonic face. Like, this child can't be more than like 5 years old, but you can see it's like an adult demonic face. So again, it's like somehow, it's like live streaming AI. And obviously the dad doesn't open the door, at least not in the video clip that you see. He sounds terrified that he's just like, "No, no, no, you're not my son. Whatever's going on, you know, just go away, just go away." And the video ends as the child looks up at the doorbell camera, and it's got this demonic face. I just wonder, like, how many other people may have been taken in by this. You know, you wouldn't, if the child hadn't have been sitting next to him, he would have had no hesitation in opening the front door. What was that waiting outside the front door? And again, like, the lengths to go to, you know, it was the baby's voice, the baby's image. Any parent is going to be fooled by that? It was only that his own child was standing next to him. He still did a double take to be like, am I being tricked? It was very odd. And again, this was at night, and the spooks really do come out at night, y'all. The last one I actually saw this morning, and I thought it fit quite well in this cautionary tale I'm adding at the end here. So again, terrible story that did not end well. A man shows up, this was in America, I'm not sure where. A man in a UPS uniform holding a package forces his way into a property after ringing the doorbell, and he overpowers the son, who's kind of like a young adult, and then the perpetrator calls to two further accomplices who were waiting just out of sight, and together they enter the home and kill all three adults inside, and the two young children are left alive but hugely traumatized and now orphaned. Further police reports have suggested that this was maybe a drug deal that went, they thought that maybe they thought the home had drugs or money, and that was the reason for the break-in. But, they killed three people instantly. It was a massacre in front of the children. And you can actually see the young child dragging the baby. There's like a toddler and a baby, and the young toddler is actually physically dragging the baby out of the house, away from the murdered parents. It's horrifying. Apparently the man in the UPS uniform was a previous UPS employee. That is how he had a uniform. But again, a lot of people might look on their ring cam or look out the window and see, oh, there's a man in a proper uniform. He's got a package. It must be for me. This must be. You wouldn't even think twice. Especially if you get a lot of stuff delivered. So I just want people to be, practice extreme caution at the moment. I mean, at all times, but things are ramping up, and these demonic and sadistic influences are really coming out of the woodwork and out of the shadows, and they're exercising no caution at all in trying to trick people and make them believe something that is not happening, or make them believe something is happening when it isn't. And, every one of us has a front door and a doorbell and a phone, an iPhone or an Android or a tablet or whatever. And we never really know who we're speaking to online anyway. And I think we could all do with upping our vigilance around these things. And if you're not expecting a package or a delivery or a visitor, especially late at night, don't just open the front door, please, people. Be very vigilant about who's hitting you up on things like WhatsApp, and find ways for yourself to prove identity. Ask people to prove their identity to you. There's lots of ways you can do it. I'm not even going to go into it. You need to be savvy about that yourself. But again, you don't have to open the front door to anybody. If someone says, I've got a package for you, and you weren't expecting a package, you don't have to open the door. You can say, fine, just leave it outside. And take your chances with the porch pirates. Don't be hoodwinked. Don't be caught alone at night on your own when there's no witnesses and no one to help you. Because in most cases, the police are not going to turn up within 15 minutes. And if they do, even if they do turn up, it may be too late. And I'd hate to see this happen to anybody. So that's my little sidebar done. I just felt it was, you know, quite possible that that phone call from David Wilcock's phone could have been faked, could have been part of a setup that then created, you know, the conditions for the following events to happen. And I wanted to talk about how easy, apparently, it is now for people to get tricked and fooled. There's a lot of very untrustworthy, scary, desperate people out there who don't have compassion, they don't have a moral compass, and they don't have a care in the world about what or how someone's life could be turned upside down. So please practice caution, look after your loved ones, and be very conscious with your children about who they're talking to online, because the online cyber stalking, cyber bullying and trolling is at an all-time high, and it's really, really scary. So thank you for listening. Please do feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the chat, but please keep it respectful. And if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't comment. It's not a place for that. David Wilcock was loved by many, and he was a great support to others. He is going to be sorely missed. If you don't know of his contribution to literature, science and history and UFO research, please take a look at his incredible body of work and let him guide you to hidden truths from behind the veil and beyond the veil. I am sure David is watching over all of this, and he will be touched to know that you care. Thank you, David. We will keep searching for the truth. You can kick your feet up with the aliens and watch disclosure go down from the upper room. I want to end this video with a call to action that in whatever way you can, please keep asking questions, keep pressing for answers. Press the authorities for an autopsy report and the body cam footage and the phone call to the police. These items do exist, so why are they not being discussed or disclosed? I send my deepest sympathies and prayers to his family and friends and the collective of followers and truth speakers who loved him so much. Rest in heavenly peace, David. And my last comment would be, I am not suicidal, and I have no intention of taking my own life, and I never would. Thank you.